Quacker Jacks.
That's the Quacker Jacks. What do you say, Caden? Well, good morning, everybody. It's 18 degrees Saturday morning here on Peach Peak. Today we are going to get the day started by filling up all the feed cans over there and then feeding the animals. And I think what I'm going to do is start putting together my pond construction video. You know, we had the pond constructed back in August, and so I really wasn't shooting any YouTube footage or anything then, but I took a lot of pictures and a little bit of video, the construction and all. And so what I'm going to do is take you around the farm and kind of show you where we looked at different sites to construct it and how we decided where we were going to put the pond, and then I'll share some time-lapse pictures of the pond filling up with water and all that. So hopefully make a neat little video to kind of get everybody up to speed on where we're at with that. So we'll get into that and see where the day takes us. Brought you out here kind of to the top, the north corner of Peaks Peak, and it's really hard in video to get an idea of elevation change and all that, but our house, our little farm area is just down over the hill here. There's probably an elevation change of about 200 feet or so from this point down to there. I haven't actually checked it, but just an idea. But you come up here, you can kind of see there's a highway over here that actually was cut through the property. I own a few acres on the other side of the highway. This was done 25 or 30 years ago, I guess. But that kind of changed a lot of the landscape around here when they cut through here. Including some things I'm going to show you in our lower field down here where I initially wanted to put our pond. But I brought you up here just to kind of give you an idea of why we call it Peaks Peak. Now obviously we're no mountain here, but these are some of the big hills in our area. So that's just across the road from our house down there. That's the log yard. I've got some decent drone pictures that I may throw in on this, kind of get an idea of that. And then we've got the Black Angus cattle farm across the road there. Kind of see the pictures of our hills that surround us, the highway coming down through there. Now I'm gonna stick you on time lapse, and we'll drive the tractor back on out of here, and I'll take you and show you some of the areas where we thought about putting our pond. Now of course, the smartest place as far as catching water goes would be at the bottom of the hill, and we have plenty of water runs off down at the bottom of the hill, but we really wanted to save what little bit of pasture area we've got down there so we can have some animals. We're not going to grow a lot of animals, but we'd like to have a couple cows or maybe a couple hogs or something. And of course, if we take up our space with a pond, then there won't be any room for that. So we decided to put it back here on the hill, so it was a matter of finding a place where there would be enough watershed to support the area we were trying to fill up. So now let's go around and check it out. we first moved here, this area right behind me, which is our shooting field, was the spot where I thought really would make the prettiest spot for a pond. That's where I pictured that we would want to dig it. It's a little bit lower, so there's quite a bit of runoff that comes down this hill and kind of fills in down there in the bottom. So I thought that's probably where we want to go ahead and build one. But you know, I of course didn't know a whole lot about building a pond, and two, I had no idea what kind of soil we were going to have down there and how that would all work out. So we started doing our research, and once I finally got the money set aside to build it, I'd been asking around who everybody recommends to dig a pond around here, and come across a guy named J.D. Lone, J.D. Lone Excavating. I called him up one day, and actually had him bring me some gravel for the driveway and stuff, and then when they showed up, I talked to him a little bit about a pond. And so he said one day he'd drive his side-by-side out, and we'd come up here on the hill and do a little scouting around to decide how we could go about putting a pond in here. Now, to start with, I came down here with my little backhoe, and I dug a hole kind of over here in the edge of the field, just to see, one, if it fills up with water, and two, if it would hold it for any length of time, just to see what kind of soil was there. That was just my own kind of little experiment. And I dug a hole, and we got rain that night, and it filled to the brim, and come back up a few hours after it stopped raining, and it had all drained out. So that really didn't strike me as what we're looking for, but you know, I know when they build a pond, they pack it all in and all that. So JD came by, and we come up here on the hill and drove around, and I told him this was a spot where I really wanted it. And of course, then he hit me with the budget to put a pond in this area was going to be pretty steep. But you know, we decided we'd go ahead and give it a shot and test it and see what kind of soil we were working with. So we brought his excavator down here the first day that they started working, and he dug 2 holes with the excavator, and both of those holes were just filled with solid rock. I'll show you a little bit of what we got into. So this rock here is, and this is out of the hole that I dug, but he was just digging buckets and buckets full of that stuff out. While we were down here digging around, the neighbor come over on his side-by-side, and he started explaining where all the rock came from. Apparently when they cut the highway through here, they were accessing where they were digging and blasting and doing all that through this piece of property, and they did a lot of filling in right here, all the dirt that they took out. There's a big rock cut out. Like I said, they cut right through the middle of this property, and there's, you know, rock walls on both sides of the highway that are about 100 foot high, and so they had, you know, a lot to get rid of, and they brought it in here, and they brought this ground up a little bit, kind of filled in a little valley with rock. So we quickly figured out that that's not going to be a good site for a pond, so we scrapped that idea, and JD took me on around the property to kind of look and see if he saw any natural valleys where there'd be a decent place that we could, you know, build a dam and dig out, and that it would fill up with water. So we headed on around the property, so I'll take you on around there. One of the first things that we did after we finished remodeling the house when we bought this place is me and the boys got the tractor, come up here on the hill, and started cutting trails. There really weren't any trails. Everything was all grown up and thick. The property had been logged 8 or 10 years ago, and nobody had done anything up here since then. So we just started cutting trails, and we've got about 1.25 miles worth of trails that we've cut up here now. So when we started scouting out our spot for the pond, we decided that field down there wasn't going to work. Well, I brought JD down the trails, and when we come to this this little gully right here, he stopped and he said, this is where we're going to want to be. He said, he pointed out how the leaves were kind of washed off of the gully, and he said, you got water running through here, so there's going to be water to fill it up. It kind of naturally created a little bowl down there, so he said, this is where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. So he builds ponds and excavates for a living, so I kind of just took his advice on that. So I really didn't know anything about that part of it, but I'll take you on up around here, and then I'll kind of explain how the land laid out over here before we started digging. This entire section that the pond occupies now was in the woods. Everything had to be cleared before we could even start, and so really they spent the entire first day and a half just taking out trees and pushing them out of the way before they could even get started. When we were talking about it, of course, my concern was more rock issues, because if you see over here in the woods, I pointed out in the video the other day that rock, it's about the size of a pickup truck over there, and there's several of them, and all down through there there's all these rocks sitting on top of the ground. And they brought their excavator down in here when we decided to start, and they dug a test hole. They got it as far up in the woods as they could get, and then they dug a test hole, and they dug, I don't know, 8 feet deep, and it was just solid clay all down in there. So they said, we got good dirt to work with here, so if we can get around the big rocks, then we should be all right. Once they actually got everything cleared off and started digging, we had a day or two where they really discussed calling it off, because they were digging up so many great big rocks, and it was taking them forever to get them out. So it ended up, we probably didn't get quite as big a pond for the money as what you might expect, simply because we had to spend a lot of money digging out rocks and getting them out of the way so that they could actually dig the pond to begin with. I'll at the end of the video here, I'll tell you how they broke down their costs on digging the pond and what it come out to. I'm not big on talking finances, but at the same time, a pond is a big investment, and a lot of people, you know, they'd love to have a pond, and maybe they've got a little bit of land, but they don't know what they're getting into or what to expect on cost. So I'll explain what we ended up spending on the pond and what caused it to cost what it did. So if you stick around, maybe you be interested in that part of it too. What we ended up with is about a 3/4 acre pond that's going to be about 18 feet deep, and now depth wise we measured, but as far as the surface area goes, it's kind of hard to estimate an irregular shape like this is going to end up being, but I measured the perimeter and kind of tried to come up with a calculation on square footage to arrive at that 3/4 of an acre. We somewhere around 30,000 square feet of surface area, which is near 3/4 of an acre. Before we actually dug, I tried to calculate to make sure we would have enough watershed to fill the pond, and that's been my biggest concern all along. An average 10 to 12 foot depth pond that's 3/4 of an acre holds over 2 million gallons of water, and I can't remember exactly what the calculations come out to, but Kentucky gets an average of 42 inches of rain a year, and I came across the number of average watershed per acre, and basically what I arrived at was I needed 5 or 6 acres of watershed in order to fill this up in a year. And that's basically what I would guess we have that's leaning in toward this valley. So I kind of from the beginning was saying that it wouldn't surprise me if it took about a year for this to fill up. We had it dug in August, so time we get through spring, I think we're going to be full, so we're going to beat that year by just a little bit, but not a lot. So it's going to work out, but it was a little bit made me a little bit nervous trying to decide whether it was going to work or not. You know, I'm no expert in excavating and watershed or any of this stuff, and we invested a lot of money in this, so it's now that it's coming together and we can see that we're gonna fill up and it's gonna hold water, I'm feeling a whole lot better about it and starting to get excited. So this is what the land looked like before we did any excavating at all. It was all grown up and a lot of trees and rocks and everything before they did any work. But I actually took several days off work when they were constructing the pond, so me and the boys spent a lot of time up there watching them clear out the trees, dig out the rocks, and construction of the dam and all that. So made a lot of good memories watching the construction of the pond.
Oh yeah.
That's like 10 times like.
We may have to move back more.
These are my screenshots of the radar documenting that every rain seemed to miss the pond somehow.
look.
Yeah. Well, as much as I hate to, I'm going to share a little bit with you about the costs of building a pond. There's running big, heavy equipment is not cheap. JD, at the time he was digging in 2020, he was charging $100 an hour for his excavator to run and $80 an hour to run a dozer, which is less than most places charged by quite a bit. I think he said he charged $150 for delivery, but we were actually just about 5 miles from his farm, so he cut me a little break on that. And at one point he even brought an extra dozer over and didn't charge for that, but he had 3 guys working out here some of the time, and basically they ran 2 or 3 pieces of equipment for the better part of 6 days out here. We spent a solid day just clearing off the trees, and that was running the excavator and the dozer both. The excavator picking the trees off and piling them up, and the dozer pushing them off, and that sort of thing. And then we come across some rocks when they first started digging that were so big that the excavator couldn't pick them up, and he could roll them over onto the blade on the front and scoot them out of the way, but you know, all that stuff takes a lot of time, so started adding up pretty quick. And where I told him when we started this that my budget was going to be $8,000, and that's all I was going to spend on it. So we had it planned out, and we marked where he needed to build the dam up to. But of course the marks that he placed was going to put the water level about 2 feet below that. You put in your 2 12-inch overflows, and then put a foot of dirt on top of that, so you're going to be about 2 foot below the top of the dam. And so he was on what was going to be their last day here working, and they had it built up to about that point, and we shot the transit and started seeing that really, in fact, this is about where it would have finished, maybe 6 inches deeper than where it's sitting right now, and it would have been full. And I told him that really I wanted to see that water go back in the woods, so that we'd have a place back in the shade with water, and so we'd also have a little more shallow area for spawning and things like that. So we talked it over, and as much as I hated to put more money into it, I asked him how much it would cost to raise it up 2 more feet. Now that's moving a lot of dirt, because you know he had to build the dam up 2 feet higher, but in order for it to not be just a couple feet wide on top, they had to bring up dirt all the way up to carry the width of it. So he said they could do it in a day, so for another $1,000 we could get it up to that point. So I came in right at $9,000 having the pond built. That's a lot of money, but at the same time this is a hobby that me and my boys are into, and I think it's something that really will serve probably generations, because I hope to see my kids and then my grandkids come and catch fish out of here and camp and all that. So I feel like it's a good investment. You may live in an area that you don't have to have the trees cleared, or you don't have to dig out a bunch of rocks, and you might get a pond twice this size for half the money. And that's kind of how it works. When I started researching the prices on digging a pond, that's kind of what I was running into, is every site's going to be a little bit different. So basically you want to find somebody that you can trust to work with. You know, running big equipment costs those companies a lot of money too. So you might think, well, $100 an hour, man, that's ridiculous, but he's running a really expensive piece of equipment, running a lot of fuel out, and he actually had to call 2 different repairs in while he was here working. He busted a hole in his radiator pushing brush, and so he had to call a welder to come out and patch his radiator, and then I think they had something to do with the rollers on their excavator they had to work on too. So you know, all that stuff adds up. So all in all, I'm really pleased with what I got for the money. I'm really pleased with the work that they did. I thought they did a good job. Now I didn't have them do really any finish work at all, you know, bringing in topsoil and making everything look pretty. I didn't have them get rid of the brush piles and all that stuff, because those are things that I can take care of. I can plant the grass seed and do all of that. So if you're going to have somebody do everything from start to finish, then you can expect to spend even more money than that. But you know, it's something that's going to bring in a lot of wildlife and a lot of enjoyment, so I feel like it's a good investment overall. I'm going to throw in some pictures that we took of the process of the building and all that. Like I said, I wasn't shooting videos and trying to do YouTube back when we had this built, so unfortunately I don't have a lot of footage of the building and all that, but I'll show you what I do have. I appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you've got any questions or comments, be sure and leave those, and we enjoy talking to you. Thanks for watching.